Hi, this video demonstrates how we can run Ansible Playbook as a callback to Nuage event. Meaning, if on Nuage some event is created, for example, if I create enterprise, then event is triggered. And for example, I want to create some default entities in this newly created enterprise with a playbook. And yeah, I will in this video I will show you how to do this. So first I will present example playbook and also the Nuage MIQ automate Ansible role that the playbook depends on. Then we'll go to manage IQ appliance and I will show you how to enable embedded Ansible in there, and then how to fetch our example playbook into it. And then we will go to automate view and we'll copy Nuage automate class and instance from system domain to our own domain, and we'll store Nuage credentials on the newly created class. And then we will also create a method out of our example playbook, and we will invoke this method from the instance. We will set it to relation method 5. And that's it. Having this done, events. So having this done, the Nuage enterprise create event will already be triggering playbook execution. And in the last step, we'll just test it. So we will go there and trigger the event, and we will check the logs and also the actual result on Nuage server. Okay, so now let's start with presenting the example playbook. Well, first of all, you need to put your playbook to some Git repository. It could be GitLab, GitHub, whatever. We put it on GitHub because ManageIQ has to be able to fetch it somehow. So you cannot store your playbook directly into ManageIQ, but you have to put it in your own repository. That's one thing. And another thing is that you need to add directory roles and require xlabc Nuage MIQ automate role, because your playbook will have hard time otherwise. Will have hard time accessing variables from automate. Okay, now the actual playbook, Nuage enterprise create domain template .yaml, is actually quite simple. It first includes a role, so it requires a role, Nuage MIQ automate, and then first task is to set enterprise ID variable. It gets it out of event hash, and this event hash is provided by Nuage MIQ automate role. Well, as a matter of fact, Nuage MIQ automate role does nothing but provides two variables, Nuage out and event. And yeah, Nuage out is obviously, well, let's take a look. So Nuage out is just authentication hash that Nuage VSPK module, Ansible module needs to be able to authenticate. And then the event hash is also a simple hash. It only has 5 keys: MSID, type, entity, and full data, where full data is entire payload. So everything that Nuage sent as a payload when it triggered event. And entity is the entity, the current entity that event was triggered for. And in our case, in the playbook, we will need to access event, entity ID, which will actually present the newly created enterprise ID. Okay, so going back to the playbook, our our first task where we set enterprise ID, we do it by accessing the event hash, event entity ID. And have it. Well, the rest of Playbook is up to author. You can do whatever you want here. In this specific case, we create a domain template in this enterprise with 4 zone templates. They are called app zone, DB zone, front zone, and LB zone. And each of the zones has also a subnet template. And then at the very end of the playbook, we also instantiate this domain template to get the actual domain, the actual zone, and actual subnet. Okay, so one interesting thing to note here is that authentication is really simple because we use the MIQ automate role, which provides Nuage auth directly for us. So we just pass it forward to the module. So this role is the key. Okay, now having your playbook and having put it in a repository, we can now proceed to the second point, which is we will go to Manage IQ appliance and enable embedded Ansible, and we will fetch our playbook in it. Okay, so going to Manage IQ appliance, I need to go to configuration, and in the server control section, I need to make sure that embedded Ansible role is enabled. If it's turned off, when you turn it on, it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to activate. So be patient. So how do you tell if it's active or not? You go to diagnostics, workers, and embedded Ansible worker needs to be listed there. Okay, and so having embedded Ansible enabled, you can then go to the automation Ansible repositories and import our repository here. So configuration, add repository. We can name it Nuage Ansible, or whatever, and the URL is the URL of your playbook repository. Okay, just add. You can see that you can also specify credentials. So in this case, we put our playbooks to the GitHub, but if you put it to public repository, everyone can see it, and that's not always feasible. So I just wanted to let you know that it's also possible to store your playbooks in a private repository and here provide credentials for it in Manage IQ, right? And it will be able to fetch it. Okay, and now we already have our repository fetched. We can see that it has 3 playbooks in it. And this is the Nuage Enterprise Create Domain Template.yaml is the one that we were looking at before, this one. And sorry. One thing to note is that you cannot see the actual playbook content. You cannot see the YAML content from within the Manage IQ because it does not, in fact, fetch it. Okay, just so that you know, you don't need to search for it because there is not. It's not visible. Okay, now having our repository with playbooks fetched, we can go to the third step, which is we will go to automate and we will copy Nuage automate class and instance from system domain to our own domain. Let's do this. Automation, automate explorer. As we can see, at the moment, there's nothing but the default Manage IQ domain, which is locked, meaning it's read-only. Meaning we cannot modify it. That's why we need to add a new domain where we will be able to modify things. So I would just name it Micha. It doesn't matter. And it's all empty now. And now if I go to the default domain, Manage IQ, there is already an automate instance that is being triggered every time a Nuage enterprise is created. And you can find it under System, Event, EMS Event, Nuage Enterprise Create. That's the instance. We want to copy this instance to our domain so that we can edit it. So if we quickly look at this instance, what it does at the moment is nothing but triggers targeted refresh. So that's the current state. Yes. Then, so our next step is that we want to store Nuage credentials on automate class that we just created. So the class is Nuage here, and we want to supply it Nuage credentials so that all its instances, like Nuage create instance, Nuage create enterprise instance, will be able to consume those credentials. Yeah, and we just go here. We need to edit schema, the 5 fields, Nuage username, password, enterprise URL, and API version. We need to provide default values for them. So your username, your password and enterprise, and the URL of your Nuage server, and the API version. We use version 5, and then you just save it. So now that we provided Nuage credentials, we can go to the next step, which is create method out of our example playbook. How we do this? We go to class, methods, and add a new method of type playbook, and we just pick some name for it. For example, handle enterprise create. Here we can pick the repository, which is our repository of playbooks, and we can pick a specific playbook and machine credential. Well, for machine credential, I'm not sure why we have to pick it, but it doesn't work otherwise, so please just do it. Okay, and having this set, we just need to update the logging output from on error to always. If you leave it on error, the entire standard output of the playbook will be just discarded unless the return status of the playbook is bad. But in our example, we want to set it to always so that we will always see what playbook has to tell to us. And then verbosity, we pick just normal. You don't need anything more because then there's so much output that it's okay. Add. Cool. Now we have created a method. And the last step is we need to bind method to instance. So if we just copy the method name and go to Nuage Enterprise Create Instance and edit it, and if we put under method 5, we just hook it there, just paste it, and it's done. Now, before I click save, I want to show you also the credentials. So even if we created credentials, if we specified credentials, in fact, on Nuage class in schema, we set default values for them, and that's why they appear here on the automate instance as well. We could override them if we wanted, but we don't want them being overridden because it's better to have them stored on a central place, so that when your username or password changes, you will just have to go to the Nuage schema and modify the default value, and all the instances will be using the new password. Okay, now the moment that I click save, it's everything set up. So we're done. At the moment, if we go and create a new enterprise, then the playbook will be run and it will create some entities in it. And yeah, that's our last step. We'll go and trigger this and we'll check playbook logs and also the actual result on Nuage server. Okay, so now going to Nuage and creating a new enterprise, for example, EMO00, just out of fun. We can see that it's all empty here now, but soon enough playbook will be run and it will populate it with some default domains and domain templates and stuff like this. And we can go and check the logs. So you must go to the configuration and manage a queue log. You scroll down and just refresh until you see the standard Ansible output, you know, the task and everything. Anytime. Oh, not yet. Not yet. Let me see if now entities are being created, so there should be output. Maybe we missed it. No problem. Or not. Let me refresh again. Here it is. Okay. So we can see the playbook was run. It says OK, failed 0, so the playbook was successful. Playbook run was successful. And if we follow what playbook has to say, so in the beginning, roles are being run, check username, password, blah blah blah. It constructs the Nuage out and Nuage event variables as seen in the playbook. And it also reports what credentials were there without the sensitive ones, just so that we can be sure that we're doing it right. And yeah, here it says handling enterprise with ID and then the enterprise ID. That's the line from our playbook, handling enterprise ID. So it means that our playbook was run, and in fact, it didn't put anything to the output, just name of the tasks and then OK. And yeah, we've already seen it, but let's check again. So on our demo enterprise, there is a default template with 4 zones. Each of them has a subnet, and this default template is also instantiated. So meaning the playbook was in fact run. Okay. Yeah, and that's all I had to tell. Thanks for listening.